Attention passengers, this is your captain speaking, Mike C. Squared, and this is One Giant Leap for Geeks. As we make our final approach, I present episode 3 of our podcast. We will be doing part 2 of the
obligatory year-end best and worst of list.
For those of you who may not have heard part 1 of this, my lists have 2 important distinctions, and I will recap them as follows.
1.
The numerical position of any given subjects on these lists do not indicate my quote-unquote like of that subject over any other subject on said list. There are plenty of things not included on these lists that I liked or disliked, but wanted to keep these lists at 10 with one honorable mention apiece. The position of these subjects is random. These are just a collection of things I enjoyed or disliked from this, the year of our Lord, 2017.
2.
These lists are comprised of movies, TV shows, games, anime, and events and geekdom from the prior year. It would be logical to make comparisons of subjects on these lists based on their numerical position to each other, seeing as those two subjects may or may not be comparable, and trying to judge which one is quote-unquote better is silly.
I will ask all the passengers to please take their seats and prepare for landing.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for
Geeks.
The worst. Dishonorable mention.
Justice League. I honestly cannot even be upset because I knew that this movie was trash from the start. All the way back to Man of Steel, to Batman vs. Superman, Suicide Squad. Everything was telling us that this movie was going to be bad, and there was honestly no surprise when I came out of it going like, yep, that's about what I expected, for it to just be bad. I mean, now granted, there was a lot of things that happened going into this film that the writing was on the wall, that this was going to turn out to be shit and a dumpster fire. Between Warner Brothers already filming the movie when they got the bad news that, oh shit, people didn't like Batman vs. Superman, shit, and having to try and course correct during production of that movie, to the unfortunate tragedy that Zack Snyder and his family suffered of him losing his daughter to suicide, and him having to vacate the movie during production. Joss Whedon being brought on to replace him to rewrite and reshoot a good portion of the movie itself. The months and months of reshoots that involved. This wasn't just we gotta tweak a few things here and there. They pretty much reshot about half of that damn movie. And it's obvious the parts that they did, because the green screen backgrounds for the reshoots and some of the costumes and the way the character's hair looks and the way Ben Affleck's weight fluctuates throughout it, it's obvious, it's an eyesore, and it's really, really bad. But there, throughout, was at least some glimmer of hope that it could have been good, because Joss Whedon is the man who brought us the first 2 Avengers movies. Now, say what you will about Age of Ultron, it's still a pretty good movie, and the Avengers is, well, it's the Avengers. This was supposed to have been DC's Avengers, and they dropped the ball so hard. They blew it. I mean, the CGI alone in this thing was terrible. I mean, this shit looked like if a fucking Etch-a-Sketch and a Nintendo 64 had a baby, and that baby was the computer that they rendered this fucking movie's special effects on, because this shit came out looking like some Minecraft level type pixelation. I mean, it was bad. It was really, really bad. And I know some people didn't care for the look that they were kind of going for with Steppenwolf, as far as what they showed in that deleted scene from Batman vs. Superman, but I would have took that over this shit any day of the week. Like, I don't know what the hell they were thinking with this. This was terrible. This was a goddamn Greek tragedy. This was bad. I mean, we can just look at the trailers and see the drastic change. I mean, in just color correction as far as cinematography goes alone. They went from this really dark color palette to contrasting to this brightly colored, that trailer where they show the scene where they're fighting the parademons in that kind of Chernobyl type town that they're in. they took that shit from this really dark black and like navy blue to like this weird red color, and the way Zack Snyder shoots things, the costumes are designed around them being shot under a certain kind of light and for them to look a certain kind of way, and the way that they did the color correction and changed the lighting on it, all the costumes look fake and phony. I mean, I've seen better cosplays than just some of the way these costumes looked in here. So between that and the bad CG, just aesthetically, the movie is just ugly. It's terrible. And then this is to be expected with anything that Joss Whedon puts his hands on, that there's going to be comedy in it and a lot of quips and things like that. But the jokes in this movie were cringy as all get out. Like, that whole brunch bit, like, what is that? Who is that? Who is relating to that joke? Like, Joss, who did you think was going to laugh at that and go like, oh, brunch. Ah, yes, brunch. Like, what the fuck? Where did that joke even come from? It was terrible. And just the Flash's characterization all throughout in general. I mean, I get it. You want to have some levity throughout, and there has to be, at least one of these characters that has a light side to them and isn't all gloom and doom, outside of Superman, which we'll get to him in a moment. But the way he was portrayed, I mean, I've heard some other people say this, and I personally, after viewing it, will co-sign this belief myself. I believe that Flash is written to be autistic in this version of him in this movie. I do. I'm sorry, but I do. The way that he comes off and some of the kind of hints that he drops and the things that he says, that he's definitely on the spectrum somewhere. Superman, the one good thing I can say about this movie is that they finally got his characterization right. He feels like Superman. He's the Boy Scout that he's supposed to be. He's not this depressed, anxiety-ridden, I don't want to do this, I don't know what to do, nobody loves me Superman that we've had so far. This is what he always should have been from the beginning. From Man of Steel on, this should have been Superman. And I might have actually given a shit when you decided to kill him in BVS, as opposed to feeling absolutely nothing when he died originally. But other than that, everyone is characterized bad. I don't like what they did with Aquaman. They made him a dude bro, and who the fuck wants to see that? Wonder Woman was okay, but felt kind of stilted in her acting, and I don't know if that was a direction issue or if that's just how Gal Gadot came off this time. The whole thing is bad. I feel like a lot of the actors are wasted. I feel like, there was no point in really, Commissioner Gordon being in this. He serves no purpose to the story whatsoever. I mean, this isn't a Batman movie. Come on, guys. Overall, the whole film is anticlimactic. I mean, from the moment that Superman comes back forward, all you're waiting for is, during that entire third act, is for Superman to just show back up and to just end it. I mean, they've already established that the Justice League is no match for him at all, and the entire point of this movie should have just been get Superman because he can just put a stop to all this shit, which made Steppenwolf even less of a threat because he was a non-starter. He was a nothing villain. He was easily dispatched without any problems whatsoever, and it was kind of a waste, really, to be honest. Overall, the movie isn't the worst thing in the world, but for this to be the first time that we see all these characters together on screen, some of the best superheroes to ever be put to paper, and this is the best that we could come up with, it's disgraceful. It really is. I mean, Lord knows what we're going to be doing with DC going forward, but this is a epic fail, and that is why it is my dishonorable mention.
Number 10.
Star Wars: The Last Jedi. So yeah, this happened. If you've already seen my review of this, then you know my feelings about it, but I will repeat what I said in that. This movie was a fuck you to the fans and to the lore of Star Wars. It almost seemed as if Rian Johnson was going out of his way to look at The Force Awakens and say, oh, okay, I see what you did there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, fuck that. I'm not doing that shit. It's like, oh, did you care about this shit? Did you think that Snoke was going to be an important character? Did you think that Luke was going to have an epic lightsaber battle? Did you think and show the space wizard that he should be at this level by now? Did you think that you would get answers to who Rey's parents were? Did you think that they would stop and having Finn shucking and jiving all throughout these movies and figure out a purpose for him and give him something to do? Did you think that you would see cool ass Poe Dameron? Well, fuck you, because that's not what's coming. It's comical. I mean, from the moment that Luke throws that lightsaber over his shoulder forward, that was literally Rian Johnson telling you, imagine the lightsaber as your expectations, because we are throwing that shit out the window. We don't give a fuck. And the fact that anybody in their right mind can argue that knowing Snoke's backstory is not important, you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. Snoke is the entire reason that these sequel trilogies exist. We know what the status quo of the galaxy was where we left off at the end of the original trilogy. For that status quo to have changed, something had to have happened. You are not explaining this. The First Order just came out of nowhere. Now, you can't make the argument that, oh, well, we didn't know who the Emperor was in the original trilogy and this, that, and the other. That wasn't important to that because the Empire and all that other shit had been running the galaxy for some time now. It makes no sense to go back and explain how that started because the status quo has been this way for a substantial amount of time. In these new trilogy, the status quo in the galaxy has changed, and that is because of Snoke. Snoke is behind the First Order. Snoke is the one who turned Ben Solo to the dark side. Snoke wanted Rey for some reason or another. We don't know. We'll never fucking find out. All of these things are important. So for you to just say that none of that shit is important and to just blow it off is a fuck you to the lore that you've already built up from the last movie, and a fuck you to the fans who expected answers to this shit. I mean, I'm sorry, Disney, I love you to death. I mean, I love damn near everything Disney puts out, but I mean, somebody needs to go talk to Kathleen Kennedy over at Lucasfilm and figure out what the fuck is going on over there, because this shit is disrespectful. And J.J. Abrams, good lord, bless that man's heart. He has a hell of a fucking task ahead of him to try and right this ship and fix this shit, especially it being the final movie in this trilogy. I mean, I'm sorry, this trilogy is a wash. Like, your middle movie should have been your Empire Strikes Back, and it seemed like that's where it was going. I know that wouldn't have made some people happy, but I would have took, in retrospect, people who complained about how familiar the Force Awakens was to the original trilogy. Are you happy now? Did you get what you wanted now? Yeah, I bet you fucking won't complain about the Force Awakens again, will you? I bet y'all motherfuckers appreciate the fucking prequels a lot more now, don't you? Even though I will admit, the prequels are still bad movies. Don't get me wrong. We're not gonna sit here and gloss that over. But I was so just shocked at how backwards the whole thing felt. I mean, Finn is still a fucking clown. I mean, he's still shucking and jiving through the whole thing. He's still thirsty as hell for Rey. He serves no purpose whatsoever. That line where he says rebel scum falls flat because it has no meaning whatsoever. Finn doesn't care about the rebellion. Finn doesn't care about fighting First Order. All Finn cares about is not wanting to be a part of it anymore and wanting to be with Rey. Other than that, he has no agency in this story whatsoever. He's just fucking there. And Rey somehow has less agency in this movie than she had in the last movie. Everyone's complaint about Rey in that last film was that she was a Mary Sue, that she can do all these fantastical things, she's good at all this stuff, and there's no explanation to why she can do it. And as far as we can tell, she has no formal training in the Force or using a lightsaber, being a Jedi, any of that stuff. She can just do these things, whereas we've already established in the prequels and in the original trilogy that you have to have some kind of development to be able to manipulate the Force in those ways and be able to fight with the lightsaber. I mean, people who make the argument like, oh, well, she doesn't need to be able to this, that, and the other use the lightsaber. just imagine it was a regular sword. Can you pick up a sword in your normal life and just have a duel with someone who's been trained to who's been trained in sword fighting and knows what the fuck they're doing? No, they would slaughter you. You can't just start fencing just because you saw somebody do it or you're aware of fencing. You have to have some kind of training in these things. And we thought at least that this would get explained in this movie. Nope, threw that shit out the fucking window. Who is Rey? Nobody. Who is her parents? They're dead. Nobody. It don't matter. Don't worry about that shit. Just throw it all out the fucking window. This whole thing is just ridiculous. And then that Leia scene, though. That would have been the perfect opportunity to gracefully take the late Carrie Fisher out of these movies and have a way to explain that away. Now that you decided to not kill her character, you could have had her been Admiral Holdo and had her been the one that flew into the dreadnoughts and blew up the First Order ships. But instead, you kept her alive all the way to the end. Now, yes, it would have been unfortunate not to have a scene with her and Luke reuniting once again, but I mean, that all felt so hollow and shallow by the end because you find out Luke was never even fucking there. It wasn't really him. It was just a Force ghost, basically. And then he just dies at the end, alone and disgruntled, and everybody hates him, and his legend is just destroyed. But the fact that we blew up the ship that Leia was on, or at least the part of the ship that Leia was on, she is not affected by shrapnel. She is unburned. Apparently she can breathe in space. Her internal organs, her blood flow, everything is protected, and she can be frozen and thawed out from space and pull herself back in using the Force, and that's okay, and we're just supposed to accept that. I'm sorry. For people who try to make defenses for that, that's ridiculous. And then in general, I just don't think that Rian Johnson understands how space works at all, because between that Leia scene and the beginning where Rose's sister drops the bombs on the dreadnought, keyword, drops in space. There is no propulsion, there's no magnets, no nothing. She literally opens the bay doors of the ship and bombs fall out of it in space. And not only that, she falls down into the bomb area while the bomb doors are open, and she is not immediately depressurized, killed, oxygen sucked out of her lungs, nothing. Nothing happens. There is no stasis field, there is no airlock, no nothing. She is completely exposed to open space beneath her, and it has no effect whatsoever. And we watch her kick a controller down to her that she catches, that doesn't immediately start floating away into space, and it's just played like straight, like there's nothing weird about that whatsoever. Not only does Rian Johnson not understand space, he does not understand Star Wars, and we giving this motherfucker his own trilogy. What is happening over at Lucasfilm? This, I'm telling you guys, if this was the kind of shit that we knew that they were going to crank out, we were better off just leaving Star Wars alone. We don't need to bring it back. Just, look, leave the past alone. Let it die.
Number 9.
The YouTube Adpocalypse. When I originally wrote this was before I posted part 1 of this best and worst of video. My initial opening statement was going to be that I was not big enough, nor was I around to really be affected during the peak of the Adpocalypse. And then, as irony would have it, the moment that I posted that video, I was content ID'd by every single company who owned the rights to every piece of footage that I used in that prior video. So, I may need to rethink the way I want to start this, because apparently I am now kinda affected. Now, granted, I am not a Google partner or anything like that, so, I mean, I cannot even monetize my videos as of yet. But with that being said, I am now in part of the pool of people who have been struck by YouTube's Adpocalypse. Now, this whole thing pretty much started with PewDiePie and a few, like, terrorist-type videos and different things like that, and companies and advertisers noticed that, oh, hey, you know, my Snuggle ad, or my, you know, Lisa Mattress ad, or my, you know, Mac Weldon ad is playing in front of an ISIS, you know, recruitment video, or, you know, a PewDiePie video where he's talking about, you know, Nazis and things like that. So, YouTube shit the bed when all the advertisers started pulling out, and then they, as they always do, they try to fix a problem, and instead of trying to go in with a scalpel and do it, they use a buckshot shotgun. And they just spray the problem and just hope for the best. And so a lot of content creators who were, following the YouTube guidelines and not doing anything out of the ordinary or breaking any kind of rules were being punished because their videos were shocking and or sensational. Which, that was a big controversy because advertisers can opt out of shocking and or sensational videos. What the fuck does that even mean? What content is considered shocking and or sensational? What are you using to classify these things? Because I swear a lot of my videos are those considered shocking, because I said Star Wars was a fuck you to the fans and Rian Johnson. Is that considered sensational? I mean, what is that classified as? The fact that advertisers can just say, I'll just click this button and that will, blanketly block any advertisements being played on these videos that someone has arbitrarily classified as shocking and or sensational. It's such a vague categorization is why people are so angry about it. In general, I mean, YouTube / Google kind of plays fast and loose with the enforcement of this kind of stuff. I mean, the whole Logan Paul controversy is an obvious one with that. I mean, yes, he demonetized or did not monetize the video from the beginning, but I think that he's smart enough and big enough to know how the YouTube algorithm and things like that work, and he knows that it would have been demonetized regardless. But the fact that it was still number one on YouTube's trending page is a problem, and I'm sure advertisers are still going to see that and go, this is a problem. This stuff is, I mean, this guy is on Google Preferred, he has, top spots and trending and everything else, and there's literally a thumbnail of a dead man hanging from a tree and a title of the video that says, "We found a dead body." And this guy is basically the face of YouTube. And you wonder why advertisers are wanting to pull out from YouTube and have issue with the way that the company is running the website. YouTube operates at a loss to begin with. So Google can't afford to lose any advertisers. So, I mean, no matter what we as content creators say and what the audience says, at the end of the day, YouTube answers to the advertisers. YouTube cannot exist without advertisers. It barely exists with the advertisers that it has currently. So no one knows the future. Who knows what's going to happen? And I promise you, someone's going to fuck this up for the rest of us again, and it's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse until YouTube has been so sanitized and stripped down from what we know it as today that it won't ever be the same and we won't recognize it in its current form. Which is really sad, because there's a lot of content creators that I love and who have helped inspire me to do what I'm doing now, that have little to no presence on the platform anymore or have disappeared entirely. There are people like, say for example, Bandit Incorporated. I love that guy. I like him. He was my third favorite Aussie after Mr. Sunday Movies and Nick Mason from the Weekly Planet. And he made awesome content and basically had to stop because it wasn't fiscally worth the time and effort that it would take to create these videos and stay on this website. And it's unfortunate, because I'm sure there's him and many, many other creators that had a decent following in fandom that have disappeared from the platform because of the actions of a small few and the lack of practical yet fair response from YouTube. Again, who knows what's going to happen in the future, but here's to hoping that 2018 is a better year for content creators and YouTube as a whole.
Number 8.
The Punisher series. This is probably my second biggest disappointment of 2017. The first is a little bit later in the list. But what happened? What happened?
You mad?
Frank Castle has gone through so many ups and downs historically with his character. I mean, there's been so many different interpretations of the Punisher, it's ridiculous. And none of them ever seem to really capture who Frank is and really do that character justice. And we finally got a good actor to portray him in John Barenthal. And we finally got a medium to place his character in that works for him. I truly, truly believe that a Punisher series will work a million times better than a Punisher movie ever will. The Punisher is not a unique and interesting enough character to make a movie of that I think will be different enough from anything else that's currently out there. I don't think that you could put out any Punisher movie that would ever be as good as a John Wick or The Raid or, something like that. So the fact that they put him in a series really lets you go into the psychology of this character and do a lot of fun things with him that you may or may not have been allotted the time to do in a feature-length film or some kind of movie series or franchise. When we are introduced to Frank Castle in season 2 of Daredevil, that is some of the best goddamn television that has ever been put on television. And the disconnect from where we left off with him at the end of that season of Daredevil to where we pick up with him in his own series, I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know if the showrunners who were making Punisher didn't watch season 2 of Daredevil or what, but it seems like he's a completely different character now. I mean, don't get me wrong. He still barely talks and just grumbles everything, and he's still, an asshole. But we feel like we've regressed. Like, I felt that we had progressed with his character throughout the little bit of time that he's in the second season of Daredevil. And when we get to this, it feels like that's all been undone, or it's like it never happened. Like, his whole characterization is different now. Okay, so some of the things that are just wrong with this show overall. We spend way too much time with Microchip and his family that thinks that he's dead. There is, just countless minutes of episode time that is just wasted with his family. Like, that whole thing with Frank and Microchip's wife kissing and everything, they thought like, it's gonna be some drama and love triangle, and it goes nowhere. It means nothing. It's a throwaway thing. Nothing comes of it. Nothing happens. It was pointless. The relationship that Frank develops with Microchip's kid. All of it. It's just pointless. It's just filler. It's there. It's Iron Fist levels of bad. I was just, it boggled my mind. I can barely even find the words to describe how just disinterested I was in any time that they came on the screen. And honestly, the show overall is just packed wall to wall with filler. It's just filler. Nothing happens for a good chunk of it. It's so slow. To the point of you are fighting sleep while you're watching it. I can't even count how many times I had to go back and rewatch sections of episodes or almost entire episodes because I just fell asleep in the middle of it. I never had that problem with any of even Iron Fist. I stayed up through. And I think that was just, I was being fueled off of just sheer anger watching Iron Fist. But the Punisher series is a massive letdown. I don't know what happened. Why are we retreading the same story that we went through in season 2 of Daredevil? Literally, this entire season of Punisher, we're basically retreading the story of Frank's family being killed and him trying to seek revenge for their deaths, and you finding out these revelations about who did it, and it was somebody close to Frank that he knew in the military, and it involved some shady shit with other government agencies and yada yada yada. We've done this. We told this story already. Why are we going back and doing this? If you wanted to tell this story, then we should have been doing something different in his first appearance in season 2 of Daredevil. Why are we going after this? I mean, that could have been, hey, you know, he's punishing some other criminals who are loosely, you know, involved, or he's just on this, they're just in the way to his end goal that he will get to in his own series. But that felt finalized in season 2 of Daredevil. It felt like that was the end, and they kind of left some little breadcrumbs like, oh, there might be a bigger story behind this, but I'm like, we basically just retreaded that same story from his first appearance in Daredevil show. So I really felt like this entire series was a waste. He barely puts the fucking skull on. I think he wears it at the very beginning, and then like in one episode towards the end. The entire thing is deceptive. Like, it's so lackluster. The action is so non-existent in the show. It's ridiculous. All the cool shit that they showed you in the trailer for that show is basically just the final 2 episodes of the show. All those gunfights and that warehouse looking thing, all that's in that place, that his hideout that him and Microchip has. That happens over the course of 2 episodes, pretty much. The show is boring as shit. For a show about a guy who kills mob people and gangs and shit like that, and has just a small army's worth of an arsenal at his command, and is just a badass overall, this was the slowest, most boring shit I have ever watched in my life, and I wish that I could get those hours back, because this was a waste. I am in no way, shape, or form excited for the second season of The Punisher. I don't know what they're going to do to make this better, but this was terrible. I am so disappointed, because I had finally thought that we had made a Frank Castle that general audiences would enjoy watching, and we could really delve deep into his psychology and give us a good attachment to his character, because we may not agree with his methods, but we like him as a person enough to follow him on his journey and want to see where he goes next. But after the de-evolution of his character in this series, I could care less what happens to Frank.
Number 7.
Video game microtransactions. So this was always going to happen. From the emergence and the explosion of popularity of mobile games, this was bound to come to consoles, and it had to come to a head eventually, and I'm glad that it's finally being addressed. Microtransactions have been the bane of gamers' existence for years now. I think a lot of times people I think mobile games get a pass when it comes to microtransactions because they are free to download, so I think, and just like console and PC games that are free to play, I think that people don't have as much of an issue with microtransactions when it is a free-to-play game, because you've got all this free content at the start, so you kind of almost feel obligated, you know, to pay something into it, or at least I do, especially if I've spent a lot of time with the game. It's like, well, the least I can do is, hey, you know, give these guys a little bit of something for all this time of entertainment that they've given me so far. But where my issue comes in with microtransactions on consoles is I have already paid you the $60 for the fucking game. And the fact that you are trying to now coerce me into giving you more money to level up faster or get better weapons and things like that, that's not fair. Now, don't get me wrong, I have a full-time job, and I also do this. So I don't have a ton of free time to really grind out in games like I used to when I was younger. That being said, I can kind of understand when people would rather just go ahead and shell out a little bit of money for, you know, faster access to something in the game, as opposed to going through and having to do this arduous grinding to get better weapons or get to certain levels or get attributes and different things like that for your character. And I understand that. That being said, though, that kind of comes with the territory. It's especially when it's a competitive game. Now, if it's something where, hey, there's no online multiplayer, there's nothing but NPCs all around the game, so you can do whatever you like with no consequence to any other player in the game who may not be able to financially invest into the game to get to the level that your character may be at or that you may be at. So if it's a closed off, competitive game, sure. Hey, if you want to put your money into it and get whatever, knock yourself out. Hey, you want to get some new skins? You want to get a new skin for your gun, a new outfit, a new emote or something like that you want to pay for? Knock yourself out. But when it becomes pay to win in competitive games, that's when I start to have a problem with it. Especially with like these loot boxes and things like that, where the odds of you actually getting something good in these things are ridiculous, but they're still just the same going, okay guys, hey, it's fine, you didn't get that gun that you wanted this time, don't worry about it, you just shell out $5.99 and you can get another roll at that loot box, you can get another chance. Hey, you didn't get it that time, it's okay, give us another $5.99 and we'll give you another chance. It's like, it's literally gambling, and a lot of young kids play these games, and they are susceptible to this type of deception. I mean, video games in general are addicting. I mean, I'm sorry to say, but they are. They are systematically designed to hit the pleasure centers of your brain at certain intervals and things like that to get you to continue to play them and make you want to keep getting that fix from the game. And these kids are gambling with real money, and they have not developed that self-control and self-awareness and things like that to help try and keep them from blowing their parents' entire life savings on, fucking, Candy Crush, anything. So, I mean, there's been a few companies that have come forward and that have kind of started to kind of put the kibosh on some of this stuff, or at least, tell video game companies, I believe it was Apple, came out and said that, anything that they have, that they are using through their Apple platform, that they would have to divulge the odds of winning something in their loot crates or loot boxes to at least give the user some kind of awareness of the likelihood that they will get something with the money that they're investing into the game. I can't see the future, but I cannot wait to see what happens when the dust settles from all this and see, because I mean, EA is one of the most hated companies in the world, and this shit is not making them look any better, and I'm really interested to see what the compromise is going to become from this, because now that this is getting national attention and media, mainstream media attention, these video game companies are starting to come to the realization that either we're going to have to police and regulate ourselves, or the government's going to step in and do it for us, and they don't want to mess up their free market, so I don't think that they want that to happen. So I'm glad that this came to a head. I'm just surprised that it took as long as it did. And I'm really hoping that there can be some kind of compromise that is good enough for the gamers, that is protecting them, especially the younger gamers, and is still being profitable for the companies. But we'll see what happens.
Number 6.
The Defender series. Oh, Lord, they done took my baby. They done took my baby from us, Lord Jesus. I literally feel like a black grandmother whose grandchild has just passed and they are burying them. This is what I meant by my biggest disappointment of this year. The Defenders, I have been waiting for this for the last few years, and I thought that this was going to be epic. The first 2 seasons of Daredevil were awesome. I really enjoyed the Jessica Jones series. I really, really enjoy Luke Cage, which I know some people are kind of have mixed feelings about that. The first half of Luke Cage was fucking awesome. The second half, not so much. Diamondback wasn't all that great of a villain. We should have kept Cottonmouth. That's just my opinion. But with that being said, mostly everything leading into the Defenders was going well and was really well received. Outside of Iron Fist, which was the only dud, it seemed as though we were going in the right direction with the Defenders. But somehow we fucked this up. Like, okay, I'm going to say this to make this very, very clear. And this will also dovetail into Iron Fist later. I am over the fucking Hand. I mean, how do you make fucking ninjas in New York City, ninjas jumping across skyscrapers? How do you make that boring? How do you make me not give a shit about that? The Ninja Turtles seem to have figured out how to make it work. Daredevil, for the most part, not so much in the second season, but still figured out how to make it work. The Defenders, I mean, it is anybody besides the Hand. We have fought the Hand so many times now. They are obviously so inept and so pointless. It is ridiculous. I mean, they are the worst foil that y'all could have given the Defenders. You could have made their villain anybody else. Anybody else. Leave the Hand alone. Like, no one wanted that. The Hand, we are so over the Hand, it's bad. And that's one of the unfortunate things about these streaming platforms that have these shows, whereas it's not like regular traditional TV where there's breaks in between. You have season breaks and holiday breaks and things like that, so you can kind of sit back, kind of take in everything you've done, look at where the story's going, see how people are reacting to it, and kind of course correct as you need to. With this, they were already cranking these shows out, and I mean, the Defenders has been in production for quite some time. So, I mean, they had already committed and decided this is where we're going with this show, and they never really had time to pump the brakes and say, like, whoa, wait a minute, maybe we should rethink this whole fighting the Hand thing. I mean, Sigourney Weaver's character is interesting on paper. They do nothing with her, and then the big twist reveal is, oh, the real villain is Elektra the whole time. She's the main... I don't fucking care. Like, I was over Elektra before the end of Daredevil's second season. I don't want to see her as the main villain again. I was fine with her being a henchman. I thought that they were spending too much time on her character and trying to have Matt convert her back, but I could live with that. But making her the main villain at the end, no, miss me with that shit. Everybody worked well together for the most part. They somehow made Iron Fist less annoying than he is in his own series, but he's still the most unlikable character, and I felt that there was a lot of meta things that were going on in the show, because I felt like the other characters, the other Defenders, treated Danny like they were the audience, and it was just like nobody likes Danny, and he's just a fuck up, and they make fun of him, and just no one cares for Danny. And I feel like that was some kind of meta thing that they were doing because they knew that, you know, people didn't really like, you know, Iron Fist all that much. Who knows? That could have just been me because I just don't like that fucking guy. This is shorter than the other series, but yet it still felt like it had just as much filler as the full length series. There was a lot of shit that they go over, a lot of expository dialogue and things like that, little side quests and stories that they could have dropped out. I felt like they spent way too much time with the supporting characters from each one of the Defenders' separate shows. I didn't need to have Karen and Foggy and the lawyer chick from Jessica Jones and Luke Cage's supporting cast and Iron Fist supporting cast. I didn't need all that. Like, they could have had maybe one or two people and then called it good and went from there. Like, they could have had Claire and maybe Foggy and or the lawyer chick from Jessica Jones' show. Other than that, there was no need to have all those extra characters in there. They were just taking up space and eating up runtime. And I'm going, why are we doing this? We already have a short series. Why are we using all this space for filler characters. It was pointless as all get out. The show overall could have been good. The whole mystery and the reveal of what is keeping the hand alive and why they're immortal and how they can do all the things that they do. It's on paper, it's cool. It's the fossil of a fucking dragon that is underneath New York City. That is a cool concept on paper. And again, they somehow made it boring and stupid by the end. They kept it in so much mystery. They just said that from the get-go, then I would have been fine with it. Or if, I don't know, they actually show a fucking dragon in one of these shows. This is the second time in one of these Marvel Netflix shows that we've brought up a dragon, and I have still yet to see a fucking dragon. I've heard a dragon talk, quote unquote. I've seen, quote unquote, dragon's red eyes, but I've still yet to see a dragon breathing fire, doing something. Show me a fucking dragon. Clearly, a lot of this shit is tied up in some kind of dragon something. So please, stop teasing the dragons. But honestly, I hope we don't revisit the hand again. So, hey, if those were my two opportunities to see something with dragons, then the hell with it. I'm done. I don't care. I'm done with the hand overall. And honestly, I don't even know what's going to happen with these Marvel Netflix shows going forward, since now Disney is pulling their content from Netflix and they are starting their own streaming service, or maybe they're going to just take over Hulu with this acquisition of Fox. Who knows? You know, we're still waiting to see how this all plays out. But as far as disappointments of this year, this is my number one disappointment. This was the thing in 2017 I was looking the most forward to, because they had gotten so much goodwill and had done so many good things with these Marvel Netflix shows, and we finally came to a point where we hit a wall. Iron Fist was the precursor to it. That could have been a fluke, but after the Defenders, I can finally say for sure that the Marvel Netflix shows have lost their way, and Defenders is the culmination of a bunch of bad ideas that were good ideas on paper, but were poorly executed, and it's a shame.
Number 5.
The FCC abolishing net neutrality. How do you become the most hated person on the internet? You start fucking with the internet. For those of you who may have been living under a rock for the past year or so, the FCC chairman, Ajit Pai, has been pushing forward an agenda to abolish the Obama-era regulations that protected the internet and treated it as if it were a utility that was regulated by the government. It has been under these protections since 2015 for a multitude of reasons that took place in the early 2000s that got us to this place. Ajit Pai, the newly appointed FCC chairman, has decided that he wants to deregulate the internet and just let the quote-unquote free market regulate itself, which we all know how that is probably going to turn out. The biggest problem here is that the ISPs are going to fuck us so bad. The internet service providers have no interest in investing in an infrastructure and making different pay scales and plans to make prices for the internet better for the consumer. They have no intention on doing that whatsoever. So if you have tricked yourself into believing that that's what's going to go down, I am sorry to say that that is not how this is going to play out. It just isn't. More than most likely, what's going to happen is that the internet service providers are going to start treating the internet in these tiered packages like we've seen in some other countries and like we've seen with mobile providers. Cell phone service providers, they have been notorious for having these data caps and bandwidth, throttling and, fees for, just different kinds of uses that you would use for the phone in 2018 now. There's too many different things that you can access on your phone for it to be still treated like the internet is the internet from 1999. Like, we have come a long way, and these service providers are still treating the internet like it's 20 years old. At least how we pay for it as far as cell phones go. Now, with the internet that we know as far as like broadband internet and things like that, it has been protected for a while. And a lot of this basically came about because internet service providers were throttling the internet speeds for peer-to-peer programs, like things like Kazam or LimeWire, things like that. And they were taken to court, and the FCC or the court it had been decided by some governing body that the internet service providers could not do that, and that they had to treat all the bandwidth that came across equally, and they could not throttle to different services and applications and websites and things like that. This happened a few different times. ISPs had gotten in trouble for taking preference over certain streaming services over another, as for example YouTube got special preference over other streaming services, and they got in trouble for that. And it was this back and forth thing, and the ISPs were suing the FCC, and the FCC was making different regulations, and courts were deciding that they didn't have the power to do that, yada yada yada. By the end of it, that's how we finally got to the point in 2015 where Obama put into place regulations that would treat the internet like a utility, and that it had to all be treated equally and fairly, and they could not take preference over one website or application or service over another. They could not throttle speeds to different things or another. They couldn't charge people different things. There could be no quote-unquote fast lanes. It was just the internet. And Ajit Pai wants to change that. And mind you, Ajit Pai is also a former employee for one of the biggest ISPs in the world, Verizon, who stands to benefit greatly from this deregulation of the internet. Cable and internet is already starting to charge people more. I just read an article that just came out talking about how this is already affecting things, and ISPs are preparing to fuck us, basically. Like, they're already raising prices because, they claim the costs that they're incurring by carrying certain channels and things like that, and yada yada. But really, they're getting ready to fuck us. They know what's going down. They're bracing themselves for all the money that's about to fall into their lap. It's the writing's on the wall. I'm telling you, it's coming. Now, there are some things that can still be done. There are a few senators and things like that that are trying to make motions to stop it. But at this point, I feel defeated on this front. As far as the battle has been lost, the war is still going, but we've definitely lost this battle. I mean, supposedly the people who support this and argue for this are saying like, oh, it's going to create all this innovation and it's going to help these, smaller companies, independent, ISPs, get more customers and things like that. And it's like, no, it's not. Like the big companies are going to smother them out or buy them up. There will be no more competition. It will, if anything, make innovation become stagnant, because only the people who have the deep pockets and can afford to pay for a higher, bandwidth and pay for faster lanes and things like that will benefit from this. Only the people who already have money will stand to benefit from this. This is not changing anything. And if, supposedly, from what Ajit says, this won't make the internet worse, I haven't really heard a reason of how it's going to make it better, so why change it? Why fuck with it if it's working? But regardless of your political leanings or what you feel about net neutrality and government regulating the free market of the internet and whatever else, I think we can all agree that Ajit Pai is literally trolling the entire internet. From the videos that he put out explaining all the things that you can still do after, the internet is deregulated. Like, you can still gram your food. You can still do the Harlem Shake. And I'm like, really? We're making 2-3-year-old references and shit and fidget spinners and really? And memes and shit? Really? I'm supposed to take you seriously as an official, and you're running shit and you're responsible for shit and you're making videos like this, and just like the articles that he's written and just different things that he said publicly. The man is a troll. A troll, and he is trolling the entire internet. The 2017 was secretly the year of the troll. The troll has gained so much power and voice is so loud now. It is astonishing. I'm telling you, if we don't remember anything else from this past year, it's that trolls have taken over and they are openly trolling us at every turn. And I don't know what to think about what may happen with the internet going forward. I'm really afraid for the future, though. I'm trying to be optimistic. We're fighting the good fight, so to speak, but it's not looking too hot, and we're being beaten by a troll. A fucking troll.
Number 4.
The Flash, Season 3. Hear me. I'm gonna say this shit in plain English. Hear me. No more speedsters. I'm done. I'm done with the speedsters. Barry, Wally, Jesse Quick, Reverse Flash, Zoom, Savitar, that one Flash from that alternate timeline, from the Flashpoint timeline. I can't think of his name, but he was like the worst one. Just all of it. Like, I'm done with the speedsters. I get it. They are established characters in the Flash continuity, and these are villains and adversaries, and there's all kind of speedsters all throughout that. I get that. That's fine. But I'm done with them. I'm done. Especially, I'm done with speedsters for villains. Like, can we please do something else? Now, I should have probably said this at the beginning. I am not current with Flash right now. I have not caught up with season 4 yet. I normally watch the CW shows at once. I usually stream it and kind of just sit and watch them in bulk. But I am not current with this one, so I don't know what's happening in this. But this is just about season 3. From season 3, I'm done with the speedsters. I'm seriously done. I cannot deal with the speedsters anymore. It was fine in the first 2 seasons. But the second time they did it, it was kind of waning, and Zoom was kind of cool, but the reveal of who he was and trying to keep it a mystery and all that, it was like, okay, we already did this once. I feel like we're just retelling season 1 again. So when they bring it up again in season 3, I'm like, you know what? I'm done. We just keep retelling the same story from season 1 again. About halfway into season 3, maybe not quite halfway, maybe about a third of the way into season 3, they finally came out, and it's like, oh, it's a speedster that's the villain, because at first, you think it's the alchemy dude, but no, it's Savitar. And then you come to find out the big reveal at the end of, it's somebody that Barry knows, and that's close to him, just like Harrison Wells was, just like Zoom was. Now it is Barry himself. And the whole explanation of how he's a time remnant and this, that, and the other, that sounded like it could have been cool, but they don't really do anything with it, with all that explaining. It was just a convoluted way to just say, hey, the villain's Barry. It was bullshit. This season was terrible. I mean, if they made the reveal of who Savitar was like mid-season, it would have been more interesting, and then that way you could have taken your time and really expanded on the idea of Barry becoming a villain and what that, will do to the dynamic of his relationships with the other characters in the show, and how they may see Barry differently now, and how, they may come to empathize with the evil Barry. Like, there was all kinds of really cool stuff that they could have done with that idea, and it's just wasted, because by the time you find out that it is Barry, there's a handful of episodes left. They gotta wrap it up. They gotta finish up this whole, are we gonna kill Iris thing, which, I mean, come on, guys. We all knew that they weren't gonna kill Iris. I would have liked it if they killed Iris, because honestly, I wanted Iris to die. Her character has become so unbearable, it's ridiculous. She has become Felicity levels of annoying, and I'm over Iris. So either they need to get back to basics with her characterization, or kill her off or something, because I'm done with Iris West. Well, I don't even know. I don't know if technically they're married. I don't know what the hell is going on. The way that the finale ended was lackluster. I mean, again, it felt a real reminiscent of what we did in season 1. It's like the whole fucking, city is going to be destroyed, and they have to do some shit, and Barry has to, this time he has to go into the Speed Force. Before, he had to go into, some crazy wormhole thing that had opened up over the city, but we didn't find out until the beginning of season 2 that it was it wasn't him that went in there. It was what's her face's boyfriend, the ice chick. Regardless of the point, they have all kinds of things that they can do with the Flash. She has all kinds of different characters that they can make the villains. I mean, they do a good job of bringing in a lot of the different, like C and D list villains that the Flash has. And I mean, honestly, the Flash himself is a A-list character, but really his rogues gallery is very C and D list to begin with. So I kind of can understand the conundrum that they may be in when it comes to picking big bads for the season. But please, just no more speedsters. Miss me with the speedster shit, please. I don't know what other direction that they are going to decide to go yet in season 4. I don't know what they're going to do going forward beyond that in season 5. But I swear to God, if a new speedster pops up in season 4, I might just have to wash my hands of Flash for a while. Not completely, because I still like that show. It's campy, fun, and silly, but I have a good time with it, and I like it for what it is. But if we keep retreading the first season over and over again, it's going to turn into Heroes all over again. And I'm going to have to hit the eject button on this show. So here's to season 4 being better, I hope.
Number 3.
Netflix's Death Note movie. Fuck Adam Wingard. I have not seen any of his movies up until this point, and people keep telling me how great of a director he is, and I'd really like him, because I like horror movies and things like that. No, fuck this dude. Can someone please break the mold of making bad anime movies, please? I mean, the Dragon Ball movie was shit. This was shit. Mortal Kombat was shit. I mean, technically that's kind of a video game movie, but still, it is kind of an anime as well, shit. Street Fighter, same thing, still shit. It's just, Ghost in the Shell, I didn't even bother with that one, and for the most part, everybody tells me it's shit. What is the problem? Why can we not make a good anime movie? Of all the properties that have been or could be adapted into into a live action movie, an American live action movie from anime, is fucking Death Note. Death Note does not have a ton of fantastical, mystical elements to it. The whole thing is basically a kid with a god complex who becomes a serial killer, and the means in which he kills people is the only thing about it that's supernatural, and the fact that there's, basically, our equivalent to Grim Reapers in it as well. Other than that, it's not really all that crazy. Like, I understand it's difficult to make a Dragon Ball show or an Akira movie or anything like that, but Death Note wasn't all that fantastical, so this would have been an easy one to have done. I mean, why didn't they just adapt the story? When I knew that there was trouble on horizon when it was announced that it was a movie and not a series, because I got really excited. I was like, holy shit, they're going to make a Death Note series on Netflix. This shit's going to be dope as hell. No. It's a Netflix movie. And I was like, oh, well, and that kind of took the wind out of my sails. But I still gave it the benefit of the doubt and went, maybe it'll be like a Netflix movie franchise, and it'll be sequels to it, and it'll be like its own like Lord of the Rings type thing. And I guess they are supposed to be, or they're planning on making sequels to this. Miss me with that shit. I'm good. Like, I don't want to see a sequel to this. This shit was trash. Like, why did they just not adapt the story? The story in and of itself, my girlfriend cannot stand anime. If you say Anna, she's already zoned you out. Anything anime, I have tried my damnedest to get her to watch Attack on Titan, and she won't even bother with it. But Death Note, she watched the entire series and loved that shit. And then we watched that movie, and she even said that this is not a good representation of the characters or the story. If they would have just said that this was a story that took place in the Death Note universe, and it wasn't Light and L and Misa and Ryuk and Watery and all that, then I wouldn't have been so upset at it. But for this to say we are making an American adaptation of this story with these characters and this is how we're portraying them, that's what I feel is insulting about it. You can change whatever you want to change, and I won't have a problem with it. Just don't call it Death Note. Just don't say that that's L. Just don't say that that's Light, because that is not these characters. I don't have a problem with you setting it in Seattle. I have a problem with the characters not being Japanese. That's fine by me. I get that you're trying to appeal to an American audience. I understand. I'm not whining about that. What I am pissed off about is that you totally misrepresented what Death Note was and completely missed the point of these characters. The Death Note itself did not make Light a bad person or anything, or brings the evil out in people. Light was always fucked up. This was just his excuse to be a fucked up person. It seems like they want a sequel. I pray it doesn't happen, but there's no way to tell. I mean, there's no, anything to look at for ratings or anything like that for Netflix, so who knows how many people watch this shit. I don't even pay attention to that star rating, because that shit doesn't mean fucking anything. I mean, people rate that shit just whatever. Half the time, most people don't even rate it at all, so who's to say? But if you are a fan of the manga or the anime, then you know that this was an easy one. This was a no-brainer. This could have been our shining light in the darkness of what anime live-action adaptations could be. And they fucked it up. They fucked it up completely. Missed the point of the entire story. They made Ryuk an active member of the story and completely missed the point of him. The only reason that Ryuk is there is because he has to follow the Death Note wherever it goes. Other than that, Ryuk could care less about Light, L, any of this shit, the God of the New World, any of that. He just is bored and just wants to see somebody use the Death Note. But to make him actively poke and prod at the main characters and be deceptive and have his own ulterior motives and things like that, what did you watch when you watched the anime? Like, what did you absorb into your brain when you saw that? Because this is not Death Note. This is a lot of different things, but this is not Death Note. This is not even fan levels of bad. This isn't even shipping levels of bad. This is just bad. If they do decide to make a sequel to this, I pray that they somehow try and get these characters in line with their animated counterparts as far as their personalities and their motivations. I mean, it would completely go against what they've already established in the first movie, but compared to that, I honestly don't care. I would much rather see them do a complete 180 from what they were in the first movie than to have a repeat of this, because this was a disgrace, and the fact that it has the title Death Note on it is tragic.
Number 2.
Netflix cancels Sense8. So, I remember the first episode of this show, I told my girlfriend that this show seemed way too expensive and the story was way too niche and was going to attract too niche of an audience for this to be a thing. They're globetrotting all over the world. They're going to all these exotic places. I mean, the production value in the show is amazing. The show looks beautiful. But I'm like, I know how the Wachowskis roll, and they've made some great stuff and some not so great stuff, but everything they do, they go all out. And unless Netflix is really prepared to spend some dough and take a really big risk on them that may not have a big return, because let's be honest, The Matrix is great, the sequels are debatable, but they haven't really made a whole lot of hits since then. I kind of like Speed Racer for what it was, but I understand the people that don't, and Jupiter Ascending is a dumpster fire. The Wachowskis used to be a safe bet, at least it seemed, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, but since then, they have definitely fallen off the wagon hard. And with this show, I thought this would be a good comeback for them, but they kind of falling into their same old thing where they have a cool idea, but then they start trying to world build a little bit too much, and the story gets too big and it's expanding too much. I mean, it seemed like the way the story was going to go, that these characters were going to come together in some kind of like Avengers type team, you know, but they kept them separate and just kept them connected mentally throughout, so it never could get into like a central location. I feel like if they could have started grouping these pairings, making, you know, couplets of these people together and then bringing them all together into one at some point, they could have cut down on the budget costs of the show, because it's like when you're in Russia and Africa and Japan and or Korea, wherever they were, and, you know, America and this, that, and the other, it's like, come on, guys. Like, I mean, now granted, some of those places could have been substitutes for other locations. Like, they could have been in Canada and just said that it was in, you know, Russia or whatever. Sure. But then there's other times where you're looking and it's like, no, they are legit in another country somewhere. Like, this is definitely not Detroit. I kind of knew that there was trouble with this one, besides my initial first assessment of watching it was, I like it, and I can see a certain type of group of people liking it, but this isn't going to have enough of a mass appeal to justify the amount of money that they're going to spend on this show. It's just not. But I knew that there was trouble when it was such a long gap between season 1 and season 2, That was a big red flag. And then when they had the little Christmas special thing, I'm like, yeah, like they're gonna wrap this one up. I mean, you know, it seemed like it was a good idea, and again, on paper, Sense8 could have been a massive hit, but that's the Wachowskis. Whatever they make, regardless of how you feel about it, they all have some kind of message. They're all trying to say something, and that message sometimes doesn't come across as clear as I'm sure that they would like it to, and then sometimes the message does come across and the message wasn't a great one to begin with. But still, I have to always give them applause for trying. They're always trying to do something different. They're always going that extra step to try and produce something great and make it deep and make you think about something. And I respect that. But unfortunately, Sense8, I mean, again, if I really think that they could have salvaged the show if they would have just cut back on all the globetrotting and all the locations, because it wasn't like a big special effects heavy laden show, but I'm sure travel and hotel fees and passports and, you know, just, it seemed like it would be just a logistical nightmare to maintain that show for more than one season at that scope. The scope should have lessened, the focus should have came more inward and told the story that way, and I think that we could have saved this. I mean, there's a lot of people who were into the show, and I mean, I really liked the diversity of the cast, both ethnically and sexual orientation and things like that. I mean, they did a lot of stuff in this show that you would never catch on a show on network TV in a million years. I mean, they hit a lot of topics and go into a lot of deep shit, you know, to do with, you know, transgenders and homosexuality and drug abuse and, you know, police brutality and just all kind of stuff. I mean, it was again, the Wachowskis are always trying to convey some kind of message and say something with their art, but I think that they get too ambitious. They kind of have that M. Night Shyamalan problem where they become too risky and they're reaching too far, and I think they overreach and they slip and they fall on their face, and it's disappointing because I like the Wachowskis and I really wish that they could have another good mainstream hit. Like, I don't necessarily feel like they need to dumb down what they're trying to do to appeal to a mass audience or anything like that, but just something that maybe isn't so layered and complex and so grandiose. Just bring it down to something smaller. You can still keep the big ideas, but tell the story in a smaller scale, and I think you'll have more longevity that way. But I was really into that show, and I really wanted to see where it was going to go, and really liked the characters and the actors that portrayed them, and I'm really disappointed. I think that we lost something really special, or something that could have been really special. And I can't, if it can't make it on Netflix, I can't think of any other network or platform that they could go to where they could be successful if they can't be successful here. So, number 1, Iron Fist. Whoo, shit. Marvel Netflix has finally put out an absolute failure. Say what you will about Jessica Jones, say what you will about season 2 of Daredevil, say what you will about Luke Cage, say what you will about the Defenders. Iron Fist is bullshit. Grade A bullshit. I have never in my life watched a main character be so passive and take no action whatsoever. He has no agency in the show whatsoever. Danny Rand is just a flag in the wind. He just goes whatever direction the momentum is going. He has no independent thought or choice. He is so indecisive and immature, and he's just so unlikable. I don't know who wrote this shit, but they made him so unlikable and so annoying to the point that you don't... Not only do you not like Danny, but you don't care what happens to him either. Okay. Finn Jones is just a bad actor. The character is badly portrayed because I feel like Finn Jones is a bad actor. Now, I have not watched Game of Thrones. I know, blasphemy. One day I will. But I know he was on that for a stint, but I don't know how he was in that. I can only judge off what I've seen from this, and he is terrible. Well, I'm sorry, this and The Defenders, and he's slightly less annoying and punchable in that one, but it's not much of an improvement over this. His performance as Danny Rand is bland, and he's like anti-charismatic. And the supporting cast is terrible. Colleen Wing is the only character in that entire series that I liked, that I felt had agency and a purpose, and who was actually trying to not be a horrible actor. The villain, not the Hand, but the main villain, the Meacham father, is I'm sorry, he's the worst. He is just the worst. He is a terrible, terrible main villain. Why is Danny Rand having a fist fight with Harold Meacham on the roof of the Rand building? Why? Why is that a thing? That is, oh my god. There was so much cool shit they could have done with that show, because you know why I really don't like this show? Why I really, really, really don't like Iron Fist? I'll tell you. Because I liked Iron Fist better when it was called Arrow. This show is... The concept of Danny Rand is basically Oliver Queen. Pretty damn much. Now, they have a lot of similarities also to Batman, but Arrow still seemed to be able to carve out his own thing with his mythology that he had to work with for his CW show. They could have done the same thing here. I don't mind you changing things. Yes, people got to screaming whitewashing and all that shit, but Danny Rand was white in the comics. I mean, you could have made him Japanese in this, I guess, sure, but it wouldn't have changed anything. And honestly, any Japanese actor that was debating wanting to, or Asian actor in general that was debating wanting to play this character, you lucked out by not being in this, because this shit was trash and it wouldn't have done nothing but hurt your career, to be honest. There was so many opportunities for them to do cool stuff with Iron Fist. The whole thing with Kung Lun, that was a cool concept. They could have done a lot of cool shit with that they kind of did some couple flashbacks here and there, but nothing that really made it worthwhile, which again kind of made it like Arrow. But if it would have been good flashbacks, hey, I would have just accepted it and let it go. I wouldn't have even complained about it. The fact that he gets his powers from defeating and punching the heart of a fucking dragon, and they do nothing with that shit. They tease that all throughout this show so many times, and when you finally get to it and you think, oh, okay, this is it, they're gonna finally show it, it is such a fucking cock tease. It is ridiculous. I am so just over all these great ideas being presented, and they do nothing with them. They drop them. Like, every chance they get to do something interesting, they fuck it up. The whole thing with the Meacham brother that's like strung out on drugs and shit, like that, he was kind of interesting, and it seemed like that actor was trying, but he was just weighed down by a bad script for the bad plot, bad dialogue, just bad everything. The Meacham sister, she is a pointless, flip-floppy ass character. It's like 1 minute she hates Danny, the next minute she loves Danny, 1 minute she's trying to take the company from him, the next minute she's trying to help him get the company back, 1 minute she believes him, the next minute she doesn't, 1 minute she's trying to help him, 1 minute she's trying to kill him. It's like, come on, man. And all the familial drama with the Meachams and their father, and then him and his assistant, and then him and Madame Gao and the hand, and just everything. It was just all bullshit. It was so fucking boring. There was, I guess you could say, signs from some of the other later Netflix shows after the second season of Daredevil that had came out, that it was like, oh, well, maybe, Marvel's starting to show some vulnerability, at least on the TV side. But this was the first one where we can all point at it and say, like, yep, nope, this was bullshit. Iron Fist was fucking trash. It was a waste of time, and they could have done so much cool stuff with it. I mean, the dude's he was basically another Daredevil. How are you fucking this up? Like, the fight choreography is so fucking bad. It is so bad. I mean, the story and the dialogue, ignore that. And, if you just want to focus on the action portion, even that's not good. The fight scenes are terrible. The special effects are really bad. Really, really bad. Like, it seemed like they had a budget enough to make all the shows they had made up until that point, and then they was like, oh shit, we haven't made Iron Fist yet, and they threw whatever little money they had together and had a potluck and made this show, because I'm like, the special effects looks really bad. The only cool CG in the whole thing is the glowing effect in Danny's hand, but in some shots that looks kind of shoddy too, so I mean, you can't even say that. Like the ending big attack move that he does where he punches the floor that they show in the trailer, that looks so bad. And the little flip move that he does leading into it is so, it's so bad. It is so bad. But from what they had done with at least Daredevil, as far as the fight choreography goes, because Jessica Jones didn't really have a whole lot of fighting like that, and the choreography wasn't like that. Same thing with Luke Cage. There was fighting, but it was a lot of just kind of him throwing people around and knocking people out. There's not a lot of like hand-to-hand combat where it's a back-and-forth fight. But I don't know if they just gotta... I mean, now I know that I think Finn Jones said that he didn't have a whole lot of time to practice choreography and things like that, which that's kind of the showrunner's fuck up for not getting that shit nailed down. I mean, the show was called Iron Fist. I mean, you are already expecting just from the title that there's going to be a lot of fighting in this, and that's the thing that you're the weakest at. Everything else I could have maybe excused, because I excuse a lot of that shit in Arrow. Bad dialogue, bad plot points, bad characterization. But at least if you can keep me entertained with the fighting, I'll at least tune in for that. And they could not even get that right. Iron Fist is shockingly bad. And is the first time that Marvel has just outright had one that just didn't go over well with really anybody. I mean, there's a couple people here and there that may think Iron Fist is good. I, for one, can say I am not one of them. Fuck Iron Fist.
Ultra Combo!
Whew. Alright, that was my worst things of 2017. What pissed you off last year? Got any ideas for an upcoming episode? Want to tell me how much I fucking suck? Or if you just want to say hi, leave that down in the comments below. Do not forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're not sick of me yet, You can find me on Twitter, look for Giant Leap, the number 4 Geeks, and on YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook, and Instagram, look up One Giant Leap for Geeks. See you guys next time. Not expecting, I was shocked that they destroyed Asgard, like completely changed the status quo. Like, Asgard is gone. Like, there is no, oh, you know, it's destroyed and we can rebuild and this, that, and the other. No, it is gone. Like, they have to, these motherfuckers is homeless now.